Welcome to Cover to Cover Book Beat. I'm your host, Roger Nichols, and this is author interview number 867. Our guest today is an award-winning writer and accomplished musician celebrating over 50 years as a cellist with a Minnesota orchestra. That musical gift is abundantly present in her writing as well. It shows in the numerous awards she's won for her short stories and continues for this, her first novel. It is a compelling story which I found many grace notes. We're very pleased to welcome Marcia Peck.
Thank you so much, Roger. It's my pleasure to be here.
Before we start on the book, I need to find a little bit more about your background. Obviously, music was in you from the beginning, but were you also always going to be a writer, or was there some event or circumstance that turned you to that direction as well?
My parents always read to me as a child. They were both musicians, but they loved books. Um, and I carried that through. And no, I did not know I was going to be a writer. I didn't start writing until my daughter was born. And I started to keep a journal, and one thing led to another. Um, yeah, did not expect to be a writer, and I did not expect to have a novel.
Ah, do your colleagues in the orchestra know about your writing career?
Oh, yes, yes. They, they would notice when we were counting rests or something like that, if I might take out my pencil and make a little note in a notebook.
Right. Well, the book Water Music, a Cape Cod story, is obviously not surprisingly set in Cape Cod. Features a cello playing protagonist who turns 12 during the summer of 1956. I hear some echoes of your life there, perhaps?
People who know me will want to see bits of autobiography in it. Um, Lily is based loosely. Lily, the main character who's about to turn 12. She has characteristics that I would say I share with her. And she is studying the cello, and she has a marvelous cello teacher who is definitely based on an extraordinary gentleman who taught me in summers. He was my summer cello teacher. He came down from Boston every year and stayed in a little guest house. And at the end of each lesson, he would do a trick for me. It was some kind of a bird sound or something like that. But he was just marvelous. Very.
Fascinating. Good. And since this takes, I assume that you summered in Cape Cod as well, or is this all invented?
Well, again, that does there's some truth to that. My family by that time was living in New Jersey, and in the 50s we did summer every. My father was a music teacher, a school teacher, and so he did have the summers off, and he loved the salt ponds and the coast there. He had grown up near Boston, and he would plant cucumbers and tomatoes, and and build little things and fix things. He was a little bit of a Renaissance man.
Ah,
Um, yeah.
well, the apple doesn't fall from far from the tree, as they say. So I'm assuming you're pretty Renaissance yourself, being involved with music and literature, both, which is not a common situation that I find. Though I find that when people are musical, they're often poets as well. And I suspect, do you write poetry?
I tried to write poetry. My first poem, which I found in my father's filing cabinet, went like this. Be gay, it's Thanksgiving Day. Be glad, and don't be sad. So not a lot of promise there, but I've tried to write poetry. I think I'm a prose writer. I
Okay.
I love to find the rhythm and the beauty in language, um, but on a more on a less structured basis, I guess I would say.
But I find that you're really good at what I call the telling phrase, the little key bit of thing. And I just have pictures of you sitting at the keyboard going, ooh, that's good, and going on to that.
I do love to wordsmith.
Yeah. Well, you've got some sure in here. And I have some structural questions to ask. One of the things I really love about is the fact you've got the Beaufort scale increasing every chapter until you get to a very the denouement, as it were. That's a fun structural piece. So how did that come to you?
I early on when I was I started thinking I was writing a short story, and then I thought, oh, maybe I'm writing a couple of linked short stories. And then finally I had to say, no, you really have to face this. I think it's going to be a novel. And right about then, I happened upon the Beaufort scale. I don't know if I was leafing through the encyclopedia or what, but it's that charming. Your listeners probably know it's that charming description of air and how the speed of air that was penned by Admiral Beaufort in 1805, so that when he was in his leading his ships at sea, his sailors could know exactly how to trim the sails by visually um, measuring the speed of air or wind by looking at the foam on water or seeing a flag wave. And then later it was transferred to land so that umbrellas difficult to control, or they're the most charming descriptions. And I knew there had to be a place for that in the book.
Yeah, it really works well. It's a nice, it ties things together and it keeps you kind of introducing each chapter with accelerating just a little bit. And oh boy, I tell you, this is primo stuff, I'll have to say. Your musical background gives you a lot to do with rhythm and with phrasing. And I just see that all over your writing. And that must be wonderful to have that gift.
Oh, that's very kind of you to say. I I do read everything aloud. I have read the whole book aloud to myself. Um, I don't know, 10 times as over time when I was working on it so that I could hear the pacing and see when, oh no, this isn't driving enough, or it's getting me there too fast, or even just on the sentence level, does this really convey the emotion I'm after?
We should kind of go through the basic plot of it. Obviously, you have Lily, who is the protagonist, and she has an older sister, and they have an aunt, an uncle who live across the pond from them in on Cape Cod, and whose uncle has tossed her father into building a house he can't really afford to be near him. And there's a lot of built-in tensions going on both in between the families and within the families, and I think that's fascinating.
Thank you. Yes, there's a definite competition between the two brothers, the father, Lily's father, and his brother across the pond. There are secrets. Lily's uncle has a secret that is not so secret, and Lily's mother is trying to walk that line between being a friend to her sister-in-law and being upstanding, and also being a friend to the people who are around her. It's I that was fun to write, the little dynamics between the brothers, because there's a lot of love there as well.
Um, the Lily's maternal grandmother's name appears throughout the book as Bertha Melrose, kind of written together. Is that on purpose, or what's that about?
Well, Bertha Melrose, the grandmother, is a difficult person, and something about her, she couldn't be grandma, she couldn't be nana, she couldn't be anything really endearing. She had to have a name that was just smack dab pointed. Um, I I I I don't know if you think that works, but I thought she just had to have she had to be one name, Bertha Melrose.
I suspected once you start to getting into her character a little bit, then it becomes fairly obvious that this is a person who does not brook anything. It's not really a healthy person to be around, I think. And stingy
Yeah,
as all get out. Yes.
yes. And you can kind of see where Lily's mother gets her troubled soul when you see the
Mhm.
grandmother in action.
Yeah. I want to quote some of the telling details that I found. I'm sure there are many, many of them, but one of the ones that was very early on, you said, my mother who would rather go without than to wear out her welcome in caps. And these are long-suffering people in many ways.
Yeah, and complicated. Yes, and she's not a bold person. She wants to keep a low profile, but she also has some convictions that she can't ignore and that do get her in trouble.
It's fascinating too. And Dodie, the older sister, this I love this line because I identify with this. It was hard to get Dodie away from a book. For her, reading was a time saver. It took her out of the fray, avoided messy conversations, taught her the least strenuous method of understanding the world. And I have to add on to that. My favorite quote right now is, of course, you don't have enough shelves for your books. If you did, you wouldn't be worth knowing. So,
Definitely, definitely. Well, I wanted for this podcast to be in front of my bookshelf, but it's way too messy.
well, it's why I've got a backdrop instead of my bookshelf. It's behind
Right.
me because we see the same thing exactly. Um, Also, there was an interesting telling detail in Lily. She talks about here I was safely out of reach of the communists, the Pope, and the Garden State Parkway, all of which represented threats to her at that stage.
Well, yes, New Jersey, all her friends go to the Jersey Shore, of course, and the Jersey Shore is anathema to her New England family. The Garden State Parkway, I guess, is a kind of a stand-in for New Jersey, which in their mind, when you're in on Cape Cod, New York and New Jersey are sort of um, the what am I trying to say? They're looked down on
Ah,
by those New Englanders who feel quite superior. Um, and the communists and the Pope, well, it's the 50s,
yes.
and she lives with the town they live in New Jersey. There are a lot of Catholics and so she hears a lot about the Pope.
Ah, interesting. And then I have a question too about names. I always am intrigued by names. And Diggory, who is her cousin Nicole's older brother. And I'm just wondering if that's a reference to Professor Diggory Kirk in the Chronicles of Narnia, because he's the one
Oh,
that owns the house where the wardrobe is located.
yeah, no one has ever asked me that. Oh, I am going to go look that up. And does he spell it with two G's or one G?
Just one G, and it's Kirke at the end of it. And,
Oh,
Diggory Kirk. Anyway, it's Professor Diggory Kirk. It just occurred to me
yes.
that I didn't see a lot of similarities there, but I thought maybe it's a shout out or a
Oh, I am going to go look at that. Thank you for noticing that.
yeah. Well, I'm kind of collect unusual names, and I had not seen that one much, so I went looking, and that's the first reference I came to. I thought, well, that's kind of interesting there. Yeah. Um,
Yes,
you have
Dick
so much.
needed a name that was just a little bit naughty in my mind.
Ah, I also want to make something with Hickory Dickory Dock, but I can't quite make that solution ultimate. There's a lot of little nice details in it. One of them that her father had polio as a child. Of course, this was in that era when that happened. And then you
Mhm.
have a little piece about when he was well enough to go back to fifth grade, they couldn't afford a wheelchair and they had to take him in a baby buggy to school.
Mhm.
That's a powerful thing that's going to stick with you. And the classic thing that I love about it is you said the story Uncle George told once and never referred to again out of sympathy for the father. I think that's a really classic bit of writing there. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. I saw that as um, a reason that there had been some shame between them for all those years and that they had never quite overcome. It was humiliating, of course, for the father as a fifth grader to go to school in a baby buggy, but
Yeah. And kind of an interesting, okay, here I have to ask this because, well, this is a very satisfactory, well, satisfactory is not maybe the right word. it comes to a conclusion that ties a lot of things together with some unfortunate things going on, which I won't spoil by saying that. But it occurs to me that there's a lot of really interestingly developed characters here. Will they be a part two to this?
Oh, what a great question. Right now I'm working on something else, so it's not immediately a part two, but wow, you've given me a lot to think about.
Well, I'm particularly kind of interested in the character of the young man that has got her Lily's attention, and I
Mhm.
wondered that might be developed down the road for an interesting story. So,
Wow. You know, a book club did ask me if he was based on somebody, and he's on a particular person, and he is not. But oh, I am going to think about that. Thank
yeah,
you.
I think Nick would be a good character. He's not terribly well fleshed out, but what we see is very positive, and her reaction to him is very positive. So, yeah. Um, how do you prepare to write first person as somebody who's 12?
Uh, I spent a long time finding her voice, and I when I was writing, I didn't allow myself to read any fiction. I only read nonfiction or poetry, but mainly nonfiction because I didn't want another voice in my head. Once I felt that I had her voice, um, and the voice of there is a kind of older, wiser narrator observing in the very background of the book
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
Um, yeah, what was your question?
How do you get ready? How do you prepare yourself for thinking and writing like a
Uh,
12-year-old in the
yeah.
50s?
Wow. Well, of course, you read back in the book and see what she
Yeah,
said,
yeah.
uh, but um, but I also uh, before somewhere around that time, I did read the book "The God of Small Things" by Arundhati Roy, and there was a child's voice in that was very meaningful for me, and I suspect might have influenced my choice.
What are your family your first readers? Who does that for you? Or do you have a book club that you're involved with?
I have, I live in Minnesota because of the orchestra, and Minnesota's been a really wonderful place to try to be a writer. There's a lot of support here. I, the book I'm working on right now is about a stolen cello, and a cello that was made in 1708 in Milan. And the State Arts Board gave me a grant to research that. So that was
Oh,
enormously helpful. And I have two writing groups. I have a real wonderful collection of writing buddies who read drafts and give very honest feedback and a lot of encouragement, and are fabulous writers themselves. So, uh, yeah, I'm very lucky.
that helps. Did any of your family members say, "Am I that character?" Are they concerned that you might be using something of their in one of your novels, your books?
Well, I do have a sister who told me whose first reaction was you left me out. Uh, um, but yeah, I reactions have been good. I think the characters are complex enough, and I do see some good in every in
Mhm,
they certainly have their issues and their shortcomings, but I find that I can root for each of them.
mhm. That's good. This is what you want, obviously. Um, the reason I asked about poetry is I think that there is a lyricism to your writing that comes through, which probably from the music, these are the cadence, the rhythm, all of that, and but there's also a melody that rolls through them. For instance, here's just an example. The morning air was luffing the tent walls, drawing the canvas gently in and releasing it again like the idle propulsions of a jellyfish moving through calm water. That's a metaphor that just those of us who have many years ago camped don't do that anymore, but remember the wind blowing the thing in and out like little bellows. So,
Oh, to me, that's the pleasure of writing is finding those ways of describing a world or inner life of a character that I just love doing it. And I don't mind I had the luxury of not having a deadline for this book. I spent
mm,
probably a good 10 years on it
oh my goodness.
over time because some with a job and 170 concerts a year or whatever it was is that we do. um, I would sometimes have to take 6 months and do nothing but catch up on laundry or whatever, learning music. But and then I would take 6 months and really make sure I was writing every day so that I had it all in my bones, in my mind. But so I could really take time over a sentence or a paragraph, and that to me, it's a joy of writing.
Well, I'll have to say that I picked up the book and I started reading it, and I looked back and said, "This is the first novel. There's no way that this is the first writing." And then I discovered all of her short stories and shorter fiction that's got awards all over the place. Just obviously, you're a developed writer, very mature, positive, mature writer. Um, but what was the very first time you sold something or published, or somebody actually published something? What was that feeling like? That first time you opened up the magazine or whatever it was and saw, that's me.
Oh boy. I yes, my first short story, and I don't, and I've since revised it, and when you change computers, you lose and so I've lost the best draft of that short story. But an earlier draft won a very small local contest from a press that's not in existence anymore. And I was so elated and so proud. And I sent the copy to my father, and he sent it back with red corrections all over it.
You can't be good enough.
The
Yes.
teacher he is.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Well, this is a lifelong habit you can't just drop out just because it's your kid. You don't want
yeah,
to go easy on them because then they'll
no.
think, yeah, indeed. Um, there's also an interesting insight. I guess in the poet's eye, do you see things or see relationships here? Um, I want to mention another one here. You said, like spoils of that long ago war, my sister Dodie and I had been divvied up early on between the two families. And then you talk about the different aspects of each of them. That's kind of an interesting observation that, and this actually happens in real life. I know that there's some sides, this side of the family likes this kid better. Did that happen to you by any chance?
Oh, for sure. For
Uh-huh.
sure. Well, yes. But I must say I think I got the better end of the deal because I got the nice grandmother. Yes, and I think families, well, at least in my experience, it's more common than we want to believe or admit. Um, yeah, for sure. It's hard. Yeah, don't know what to say about it.
Okay, well, let me ask you this one. What do you want the readers to take away from this when they close the book at last? What do you want them to go away with?
Oh, what a wonderful question. I want them to feel as though they've known these characters, that they've seen something in them that they may or may not see in themselves, but gives them a little view of a world that that in the writing for me was very real. And uh yeah, I guess I'd like readers to find that there's that people are complicated, that people are complicated, and that's good, actually.
It is good. And being able to convey that in a message in a way that just slides into your consciousness and you go, wait a minute. One of the things I do like about, let me, one more compliment I want to throw at you, and that is there's writing that calls attention to itself and says, look how clever I am. And there's writing that takes you there and is transparent, and you look back at it and say, oh, that's what happened to me. And that's what I think you do.
Oh, I confess that I love the operas of Wagner. I love Beethoven. I love there's so many Shostakovich. There's so many symphonists that
Mhm.
are, but and one of the things that Wagner especially does in these long 5 hour operas, and then there's five of them, that so that now you have 15 hours of opera. But one of the things that ties all that together is he takes these tiny little motifs, just a little acorn of something or a jellyfish, as you and that tiny little, it might be no more than three notes, like the beginning of the Beethoven's Fifth, um, that reoccurs all through and I I think I I try to do that, not overtly, but I try to. That's why it's hard to for me to write a novel if I'm taking time off from it. I have to have the
Oh,
whole
yeah.
thing in mind so that I have these little motifs that I can plant in various places without drawing attention to them.
Yeah. I
Trying not to.
well, I picked up a couple of them along the way. One of the motifs, of course, obviously the wind with the Beaufort scale and the whole thing. And there is I will not be surprised people I say there is a storm that comes up in the as we get close to the end of the book, as he builds up to that. But also you had a little thing about close but not quite touching. You mentioned that in several places, and I think that's an interesting observation as well.
Oh, that's amazing that you brought that one up. That idea of the tether, that Cape Cod is tethered to the mainland by a bridge, nothing more than a bridge.
Mhm.
And in that scene where the end, it's the summer the Andrea Doria sinks, and I was very moved by that, by the image of the Ile-de-France, that matronly ship, grand Atlantic sh line, that she turned around 40 miles out to sea and came back to help this brand new princess of a ship.
Mhm.
And at one point she beams her floodlights onto the sinking ship, and to me that was a tether as well. So those again, close but not touching, and the seemed to me a very powerful family kind of image.
Mhm. And you have, in fact, early on, is there, I think it's when they're in the car on the way from New Jersey to Cape Cod, you talk about the sisters fighting a little bit in the back and don't,
Right.
on my side of the line, no, but close, and you say that she put her foot close but not touching. And so that was what that,
Yeah.
okay, okay. This is fun stuff. Um, so have you cast the movie yet?
Oh my. No.
Right. I
Who would you
was
cast? Who would
right.
you cast?
Oh boy, my gosh. I don't know enough about the younger actors and actresses these days because I'm an older person. But I can see someone like Tom Hanks being the dad. Uh,
Oh, yes.
Someone of character and quiet and not boisterous or anything.
Right.
And I don't know, maybe somebody like Bill Murray being his brother or something.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Anyway, just playing around with that a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, I just see this going forward, and I see you have a lot to say, and I just hope there's a lot more to be. I would like to see him finish the house. I would like to see the two kids get together and some other things happen as a result of that.
Oh, thank you. Well, you've given me a lot to think about.
Um,
I yeah, I Well, I should say that I just found out that the audiobook is going to come out in February. So, and
Ah,
it's going to be narrated by Emma Love, whom I've heard some examples of her voice, and I think she'll be wonderful. So
oh, great.
fingers crossed.
We should mention websites or blogs, anything else you've got going where people might want to know more about you or about your work.
My website is marciapeck.com, all one word,
Mhm.
marciapeck.com. Um, the book is on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all the usual places. Sea Crow Press, the publisher is a small New England publisher. I was very lucky to work with them. They and they let me choose the cover myself. A friend did the art, which I love. Um, so yeah, it's been a wonderful experience.
All right. And if they want to find out about your music, there are many, many albums from the Minnesota Orchestra. What do you suggest as an entryway into you?
Ah, Minnesota Orchestra did the complete Beethoven cycle, so all the Beethoven symphonies. I love Mahler. We did the Mahler cycle as well. And Sibelius is a little harder, but Sibelius second is a terrific one for anyone who loves symphonic music. There's nothing, I can't think of anything that has me as a soloist on it.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Well, I might take a little bit of, I think I downloaded Mahler's first. It has some nice passages in
Oh,
it. I might do a little bit
oh,
of that in there.
you can't do better than that. That's one of my favorites.
All right.
Absolute
Well,
favorite.
I really appreciate you taking time to talk with me today, and I really, really like the book. Our guest today is Marcia Peck. The book is Water Music, a Cape Cod story. Highest possible recommendation. Thank you so much. You've been most gracious with your time today.
Oh, thank you for having me. This has been wonderful.